Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. It's your host, Nick Giordano. I'm glad you could join me today. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with your family and friends. Put it on social media because there is so much to talk about. I want to talk about the No Kings rally. I want to talk about the government shutdown that's lasting far longer than I anticipated it to last. I want to talk about what's the driving force behind the shutdown and where we are as a country. But before I get to all that, there's an interesting story that's breaking. The United States Secret Service uncovered a suspicious hunting stand that had a direct line of sight to where President Trump exits Air Force One over at Palm Beach International Airport. So this was an advanced team that was making advanced security preparations that was at the Palm Beach Airport, Secret Service. They identified this stand. They are now, the FBI is the one taking the lead on investigating who created this stand. We don't have any evidence right now that it pertains to Donald Trump, that this is another assassination attempt. However, I do not believe in coincidences. I mean, it's a little odd that you'd have this stand in perfect line of sight to where Air Force One lands and where Trump exits the plane. And given that we've seen 2 assassination attempts on the president of the United States, given what happened to Charlie Kirk, where he was ruthlessly murdered, shot in the neck, we have to take these things seriously, and the government has to give us answers. That's what concerns me more than I think anything else, is that we don't really get answers in the United States anymore. If we look at it, we still don't have any real answers as to the first individual, Thomas Crooks, that tried to assassinate President Trump. So we need to put the pressure on the Kash Patel FBI to get those answers. What's going on here? Are there any suspects? As of right now, the information is limited, so we'll see where this goes. We're going to stay on top of it. But I really want to get to the No Kings rally because I find this rally laughable. Now, I will say, millions of people did turn out, and it was a peaceful protest. You have Republicans that are trying to make fun of MSNBC. MSNBC tried to play a clip from a 2017 protest to pass it off as a No Kings rally protest. And you can mock MSNBC. I mean, you got to mock these media outlets. They try and overplay anything that goes against Trump, and then they try and downplay any type of support for the president of the United States. However, as someone that pays attention to politics, there is no denying that millions of people went to these No Kings rally. In my area, I was driving. I saw a No Kings rally. Now, I live in a town. There's about 500,000 people in the town of Brookhaven, a little bit less than that. And I saw about 25 people on the corner of a No Kings rally, and they were all, let's just say, silver foxes, right? They were all older people, geriatric people. And it's an interesting dynamic. So a lot of people didn't turn out in my area, but we did see a lot of people turn out in the cities. And it's really interesting that you have all these old white people going into the inner cities to protest No Kings, yet they never protest the murders that are going on in those cities, the rampant crime that's going on in those cities. Where's the protest for the failed education system, where nearly 2/3 of American students cannot read or write at grade level? Where are the protests for that? I mean, that's the biggest failure. That's the biggest scam going when it comes to the public education. But you don't see them protesting that. They don't care about that. And the interesting part is they say no kings. Well, we haven't had a king since we won the American Revolution. And when we look at the current president of the United States, when we look at the current makeup of Congress, they were duly elected by over 75 million Americans that went to the polls and cast their ballots for what the left wants to declare as a king. It doesn't make any sense, because what they're really protesting is the democratic principles of holding elections. That's what they're actually protesting. They don't like how the last election went, and they're saying that President Trump needs to be removed from office, because what else can they possibly be protesting? They're not protesting, as I said, the crime in these areas. They're not protesting the failed education system. They're protesting against enforcing immigration law, I guess. They're protesting against making cities safer, I guess. They're protesting against a sovereign country that wants to determine who comes into it and who doesn't. They're protesting peace agreements around the world, trying to end conflicts around the world. Seems that's what they're protesting. Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but here's the thing with this No Kings rally that not enough people are talking about. So we know that there's paid protesters and agitators that are causing trouble. And we see it happening in Seattle. We see it happening in Portland. We see it happening in several cities throughout the country. This rally was different. Okay, you don't get millions of people turning out because they're being paid. So obviously this one's different. But here's the thing. You have 265 total groups that are sponsoring the No Kings rally. Part of these groups include the Communist Party USA, the Democratic Socialists of America, and several other socialist organizations tied back to George Soros. We have those as well. 79 of these organizations are 501c3s, 100 are 501c4s, and 24 are 501c5s. You have 24 political action committees that are donating to this effort, and 32 coalitions, what they call grassroots, for-profit organizations. What's interesting is when you look at the 501c3, C4s, C5s, these groups do not pay any federal taxes. And what I'm trying to uncover, what I'm trying to find out, maybe someone can help me, maybe Data Republicans. And if you don't follow at Data Republicans on X, you need to follow her because she does phenomenal work. But we need to know how much grant funding, how much of your taxpayer dollars are going to support the organizations that supported these No Kings protests. Because our tax dollars should not be used against us. They shouldn't be weaponized for political purposes. And it'll be interesting to find that out. You have too many of these organizations that call themselves nonprofits. But really what they are is activist organizations looking to push policy, looking to get Republicans out of office, get Trump out of office. And that's not what tax dollars are supposed to be flowing to. So we need to know more about that. We also need to look at the people encouraging these protests. You know, I heard actor Mark Ruffalo last week. Here's a guy that has made millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars for his role in the Marvel movies. Here's a guy that used the capitalist system to become extremely successful. And I don't begrudge him for that. I actually praise him for that. I think that that's what makes America such a beautiful country, that you have someone that could go out there, they could work hard, they could be a good actor, and they could get paid millions of dollars. And yet here he is on X putting out videos supporting the No Kings protests, talking about that capitalism is the problem, that America needs to move away from capitalism. It really goes to show you what the movement's really about. It's not about President Trump. It's about destroying the very framework of what makes America America. It's about destroying the framework of capitalism, the engine that has allowed for the largest middle class, the strongest, most vibrant middle class in the world, a country to become extremely successful, a country to rise up out of nothing and become the global power. That's what it's about. And again, you look at the organizations that are involved, the Democratic Socialists of America, Freedom Socialist Party, the Communist Party USA. You look at these organizations. You look at the unions, all the SEIU, the teachers unions, all supporting this movement. Remember, all these people that supporting this movement, this No Kings rally, these are the same people that had no problem shutting down schools for nearly 2 years in certain areas. They had no problem locking people in their homes. They wanted to give chief executives, governors of states, them and their handful of advisors, the power to determine what businesses are essential, which ones aren't. The people that are supporting these No Kings protests, they had no problem masking your children. They had no problem keeping your children socially isolated. They had no problem destroying the livelihoods of those who had questions about a vaccine that we didn't know a lot about. These are the same people that have been silent of how the government, how the bureaucracy has been weaponized. And I'm supposed to take them seriously? Now, I do take them seriously because when you have those types of numbers, millions of people coming out to protest, to take time out of their weekend, take time out of their day, it's something that you don't take lightly. Obviously, these people are engaged. Obviously, they're energized. And obviously, if they're willing to go out there to a protest like this, well, certainly they're going to be going to the polling stations on election day. And so we have to pay attention to that. We can't dismiss it. Some want to make fun of MSNBC and mock them because they put out a video from 2017 and made it as if that was the No Kings protest. But understand, fine, you can mock that all you want, and it's easy to mock MSNBC and CNN. But when you try and downplay the energy that's going on the far left of the country, you're doing this country a disservice. And you're asleep. We have elections in a few weeks. Now, if we could take the governorship of New Jersey, the governorship of Virginia, if somehow, some way, Curtis Sliwa could somehow, by any chance, win the mayoral race, that will deflate the left-wing energy that's going on in this country. But if we're asleep at the wheel, if you think that we got this, it's going to be a problem. And it's going to be a real problem going into the midterm elections next year. So don't try and downplay the No Kings protests. These are important protests. It shows how there are many that will support socialist and communist policies in the United States, that there is a growing movement in the United States. It also shows that the Democratic Party, the JFK Party, the Clinton Party is dead. This is now who controls the Democratic Party. This is now the Democratic platform. And every Republican should be warning the voters, pushing this message that if you want to go communist, well, then you could support the Democratic Party. But if you want to remain a country that's based on capitalism, if you want to remain a country that's based on the principles of self-government and limited government, that you have to vote against that. You have to reject that. What I'm interested to see now, though, is what happens with the government shutdown, because there are reports that after the No Kings rally, Democrats are going to be willing to do some deal making, because the reason they've been holding everything up is that they didn't want to catch flack at these No Kings rally. They wanted the photo ops. They wanted to put it all over social media. So I'm going to talk about that when we get back from this quick breaks. Everyone hang tight. We'll be right back. It's no secret that as we age, our bodies begin to break down. Now, if you want to move with ease and keep your skin glowing and youthful, you got to try NativePath Collagen. It's made with only type 1 and 3 collagen. These are the two most important types that make up 90% of your body's collagen, and they're found in your skin, bones, joints, and gut. They deliver powerful benefits without any fillers or additives. I have it every morning with my coffee, and it's a single ingredient, flavorless powder that mixes easily into the coffee. But you could also put it in smoothies, oatmeal. It's third-party tested for purity, and it absorbs fast thanks to its peptide form. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, and 8,000 5-star reviews, NativePath is a brand you could trust, backed by a 365-day no-risk guarantee, live phone support where you talk to a real person. They make it easy to get started. So check out the bundle deals and join their private Facebook group for recipes and support. Visit getnativepath.com/PAS. That's getnativepath.com/PAS. Welcome back to the P.A.S. Report podcast. Now, in the first segment, I broke down the No Kings rally, the irony of protesters who are screaming about tyranny, but they beg government to control every part of their lives. They don't care. They don't care what the government does as long as it's their people in charge. They don't care when the bureaucracy acts authoritarian as long as it's their people in charge. And they don't care about chief executives of states or President of the United States exerting authoritarian qualities as long as they're pushing the policies that they want. But the second we have an election, the second we let the American people speak, over 75 million Americans come out, vote for a president of the United States, vote to put Republicans in charge of Congress. Now all of a sudden they care about kings? It's laughable. And I want to make this clear. It ties right into where we're heading, because the modern Democratic Party is unrecognizable. These aren't the Democrats of JFK or even Bill Clinton. I mean, those guys wouldn't stand a chance in today's Democrat Party. They wouldn't win a primary, and they would be seen as right-wing conservatives. How do I know? all you have to do is look at what they're doing to Senator John Fetterman. He recently gave a speech saying he doesn't see the other side as the enemy. He doesn't see them as evil. He'll praise Trump when he thinks that credit is due, like if Trump secures a Mideast peace deal. Senator John Fetterman is going to come out and say that's a really good thing. I'm glad my president did that. And that's the kind of common sense bipartisanship most Americans want to see. And how does his own party respond? Well, they try and exile him. The far-left activists within the party, the social media mobs, the progressive caucus, they want him kicked out for daring to sound like a reasonable human being. And that tells you everything, that there is no room for disagreement in today's Democratic Party. It's no longer the Big Ten party. It's a narrow ideological club that is obsessed with enforcing socialist orthodoxy in this push for communism. And let's talk about someone that I followed for decades, Senator Chuck Schumer. I've watched his entire career here in New York, and Schumer used to be a pragmatic Democrat. You could disagree with him on plenty, but he wasn't this progressive radical. Today, he is, and the question is why? Why? And it's because he's terrified of one person, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. See, Schumer knows she's circling the wagons. Schumer knows that she's itching to primary him. And rather than stand on conviction, he's groveling to the far left. He's catering to the squad. He wants to parrot the progressive talking points, doing whatever it takes to survive politically. But here's the reality. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez is going to challenge him anyway, whether he allows the reopening of government or not. Remember, it's the Schumer shutdown for a reason. But she doesn't respect him, she doesn't like him, and she knows she could take him out in a primary. So whether he allows Democrats to vote with Republicans or not, his political future is doomed. And what blows my mind is Schumer's in his 70s. He's been in Washington for decades. He doesn't need this. You would think at some point these people would say, you know what? I've had a good run. I've had enough. I'll let the next generation take over. But no. They cling to power like their lives depend on it. They can't imagine a world where they're not calling the shots, and it's like, go and enjoy the rest of your life. I mean, these are the end stages of your life. Go out and enjoy it. But in a desperate bid to hold on to power, Schumer sold out everything he once claimed to believe. You go back 20 years ago, he sounded like a border hawk. He sounded like he was tough on crime. And he was someone that would never allow a government shutdown. He supported clean continuing resolutions to keep the government open under the past 4 administrations. All of a sudden, now he cares? That Schumer, long gone. Now he wants to tank the government just to appease the radical base. And here's where things get really interesting, because right now, the House did its job. The House of Representatives passed a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open. It's sitting in the Senate. You already have 3 Democrats, John Fetterman, Senator Angus King of Maine, and another senator that I can't call off the top of my head. They've crossed the aisle to support it. So that's where the bipartisan vote is. That brings the total of 55 senators. They only need 5 more Democrats to end this standoff. But Schumer's blocking it. Why? Because the far left told them to. Democrats don't want to reopen the government unless they get what they want. So they're holding every single American hostage. And what they want partially is to make the temporary Obamacare subsidies from 2021 permanent. Now, these were supposed to be emergency measures passed during COVID, yet here we are years later and Democrats want to lock them in forever. It's like our budget, right? Prior to the coronavirus pandemic, our federal budget was about $4.8 trillion. When coronavirus hit, the budget went up to $6.8 trillion, an additional $2 trillion in spending every year. The revenues haven't increased that fast, and COVID ended. The pandemic's been over for years, and yet the budget hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. So think about this. Temporary subsidies passed in 2021 under the American Rescue Plan sold as emergency relief, and now people want them locked in forever. And the problem is those subsidies distorted the entire insurance market. Once they expire, millions of Obamacare customers are going to face huge premium hikes, some for 5 straight years. That's why we're talking about insurance premiums going up 25, 30, even 40%. This is at the same time, copays and deductions have been steadily rising as well. But see, this is the thing. It's the inevitable result of government meddling in the markets. Instead of fixing the systems, Democrats are willing to hold the entire government hostage. And the cynical part is they timed it. They delayed any action until after the No Kings protest, because if they supported a clean resolution before the protest, the far-left activists would have torn them apart for selling out. They're literally managing the government around protest schedules. Think about that for a minute. You cannot make this stuff up. And here's where they've been caught in another lie. Democrats love to say, oh, illegal immigrants can't access federal benefits. See, they say Republicans are lying when they tell you that Democrats want illegal immigrants to get free health care. It's one of their favorite talking points. But what the Democrats are saying is completely false. Sure, on paper, federal law does bar illegal immigrants from direct benefits like Medicaid or Obamacare. But the system is full of loopholes. There's so many backdoor access points that Democrats created, and they like to pretend that these backdoors don't exist. See, here's how it works. I'll explain it to you this way. If anyone says, well, no, Democrats don't support that illegal immigrants can't get federal benefits. Understand how it works. Many states, with the federal blessing, use federal block grants and emergency funds to cover uninsured residents, they call them, regardless of immigration status. Now, that's taxpayer money. The Affordable Care Act, it allows mixed status households. So one family member is here legally, and they get to qualify for all premium tax credits for the entire family. So that means that illegal immigrants living under the same roof benefit from those subsidies, and it may be indirectly, but they're benefiting. And the Biden administration, they expanded eligibility through state innovation waivers. So they let states like California, New York, Washington open up programs that use federal funding to insure illegal immigrants. Then you have the emergency Medicaid program, where hospitals get reimbursed for providing care to illegal immigrants. It's billions of dollars a year, all federal funds. Now, no one should be turned away in the emergency rooms, including illegal immigrants. I do believe that if they are suffering, if they are sick, if something's going on, that they get care. But when you're using emergency rooms like doctor's office visits, that's part of our problem. So when Democrats claim that illegal immigrants can't get benefits, they're deceiving the American people. They know the law is riddled with exceptions. They know the waivers that exist. They understand the loopholes that funnel taxpayer money to people who shouldn't be receiving it. They don't care. And it ties directly into the shutdown fight, because those Obamacare subsidies and those loopholes are the hill that Democrats want to fight on. They'd rather shut down the entire government than give up their ability to keep funneling taxpayer dollars through this broken and corrupt system. And the irony that the same Democrats who want to tax the rich, they're the ones funding an insurance market that is enriching the insurance giants, while ordinary Americans are paying higher premiums. See, the system rewards bureaucrats, not patients. And when you hear them say Republicans are the ones blocking the deal, understand the truth. It's the Schumer shutdown. It's the far left of his party holding America hostage. Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Leader John Thune have been clear. Pass the clean resolution now to keep government open through December. Then debate Obamacare subsidies afterwards. That's how responsible governance works. But Democrats refuse, because they want to keep this crisis alive. They believe it helps them politically. And I'm not sure who it's hurting at this point. I see polls where the shutdown's hurting Republicans. I see other polls that shows that Americans are blaming Democrats. So I don't know what the truth is. But the Democrats believe they could blame President Trump, paint Republicans as heartless. One of their newest talking points is, well, Republicans control the House and the Senate, so they can reopen government when they want. What they're not telling the American public is that they need 8 Democrats to come aboard and support the clean resolution. See, they understand that most Americans have no idea how the Senate actually works, that most Americans don't understand how our system of governance works because our schools failed and never taught it to them. And if you say, well, the other party's in the majority, most Americans will believe that. And that's part of the problem. Again, it's another lie by Democrats, but that's part of the problem. And this is what Washington has become. It's a theater of power plays, blame games, manipulation. Meanwhile, people like you and I are the ones paying the price, the taxpayers, the workers, the families just trying to live their lives. And all this chaos is about pushing an agenda. It's about defending a failed policy, one of the biggest frauds ever sold to the American people, known as Obamacare. Premiums didn't go down. They skyrocketed, even though we were told premiums would go down. Competition didn't increase. Competition collapsed. And care didn't improve. It just got far worse. And when we come back, I'm going to break it all down. How Obamacare was never about affordable health care. It was always about government control, dependency, and political power. So stay tuned. I'll get to it all when we get back from this quick break. Welcome back to the P.A.S. Report podcast. Now, if you find in the contents of this episode informative, make sure you hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. Also, share this episode with family, friends, and on social media, and leave the P.A.S. Report a 5-star rating on any podcast platform that allows it, Apple Podcasts and Spotify in particular, because that's where we gain new audience members. And before the break, I talked about how the shutdown fight isn't really about budgets. It's about partisanship. It's about Obamacare. Because at the heart of this entire mess is a program that's been a thorn in America's side for more than a decade. Obamacare is an albatross hanging around our country's neck and each and every taxpayer's neck. It was sold as this cure-all, but it's turned into a case study in how government interference makes everything worse. And why do I have to say that time and time again? The more government involvement there is, the more problems are created. So when Obamacare was pitched to the American people, it was supposed to achieve 3 things: expand coverage, lower costs, and make the system fairer. And on every single count, it failed. All you have to do is start with the coverage. Before Obamacare, what'd you have? 24 to 30 million people uninsured? Well, what do we have today? 24 to 30 million people uninsured? So after spending trillions of dollars, guess what? Roughly the same amount of people still uninsured. The numbers barely moved. And millions of other people lost good insurance they had because they were forced into plans, the Obamacare plans, with higher deductibles, less choice. And let's talk about costs. Obamacare was supposed to bend the cost curve down, and instead premiums have exploded year after year. The average family premium today is nearly double what it was when the law took effect. You have out-of-pocket expenses and deductibles going through the roof. The only thing Obamacare successfully bent was the truth. And then we look at COVID. The same frauds that inflicted so many policies that caused so much damage to the United States, well, they screwed up Obamacare even more. They made it even worse. In typical Washington fashion, both parties decided to fix the rising premiums. And what did they do? Well, they threw taxpayer money at the problem. They passed temporary subsidies. The government's going to pick up the tab for the premium increases. And on paper, it looks like relief. On paper, when you're getting your bill, well, my bill hasn't changed. In reality, it was nothing more than a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Because what did it do? It simply hid the cost. It hid the real cost of Obamacare. They covered up the inflation in the system. And now that these subsidies are expiring, the mask is coming off. Every premium increase that's been suppressed since 2021 is about to hit all people that have Obamacare all at once. 5 years of hikes in one shot. We're talking 25 to 40% increases in premiums for families. Imagine if your property taxes jumped 30% overnight. How many of you would be able to afford to live in that home anymore? And you'd be furious. But that's what millions of Americans are about to feel, because the truth is simple. The only thing keeping Obamacare afloat has been the government shoveling billions upon billions of taxpayer dollars into the system in order to cover up its failures. And without those subsidies, the entire thing collapses. So now Republicans propose a 1-year extension, but that just kicks the can down the road. It delays the inevitable. It continues to support this broken system. And Democrats want to make those subsidies permanent, as if adding more spending to a $37 trillion national debt, no big deal, not a problem. Spending $1 trillion a year just to service that debt, just an interest, no big deal. And they claim they want to protect Americans from higher premiums. But what are they really covering up? What are they really doing? Is they're continuing this failure. And at what point do we end the subsidies? Because if we wait another few years, well, now you're talking 8 years of subsidies. And see, that's the thing. That's why Democrats want them permanent. So the American people never know what's really going on. It's the same thing we see in education. When schools fail, when you have 2/3 of students that can't read or write at grade level, when you have, 87% of students that are below proficiency in American history, 22% of students that are proficient in civics, 23% of students proficient in mathematics. What do? They don't fix the problem. They don't sound the alarm bells and say this is a national tragedy. Instead, they lower standards. So this is unsustainable, and it's exactly why self-government matters. For decades, Americans have been conditioned to believe that the government could solve every problem, that the federal government is the answer to everything. But this is what happens when we put blind faith into bureaucrats. They break the system. And not only do they break the system, then they demand more power to fix the mess that they created in the first place. And both parties have some blame here. Okay, Republicans aren't off the hook. Now, Democrats passed Obamacare. Not a single Republican supported it. They voted against it. But Republicans campaigned for years on repeal and replace. They raised money off of it. They ran on it. And when they finally controlled the House, the Senate, the presidency in 2017, they had no replacement, nothing. You would think after like 7 years that they would have figured something out. They would have had a plan ready to go on day one. And they squandered the opportunity and allowed Obamacare to become entrenched within the system. So what's the path forward? Well, the path forward is actually kind of simple. We need a genuine alternative, one that gets government out of the way, one that's going to restore competition, one that's going to put patients back in charge. We have to stop the consolidation that's turned healthcare into this monopoly, where instead of having private practices, you see all these doctors joining all these major big health groups because that's how much the bureaucratic red tape, the regulations are costing. Everything's being absorbed into massive hospital systems, into the insurance conglomerates, all wrapped up with government regulation, adding extra cost. Every rule adds paperwork. Every bureaucrat adds delay. That's not capitalism. Okay, capitalism is not the one causing the problem. It's regulation. It's too much government. We don't have a free market system. You know, when people try and blame everything on capitalism, when they say that capitalism is the problem in America, we don't have capitalism here. We have a shared economy. And if we look at the Nordic nations, you know, the ones that they always claim are the democratic socialist nations, even though they're not, well, we see they are ranked higher on the capitalist scale than we are. We have a heavily regulated, government-managed system where competition is suffocated and consumers are the ones that pay the price. If we actually unleashed a free market, if we encourage transparency, portability, real price competition, healthcare could be more affordable. It could be more efficient. And the beauty is that it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything to try this method, to try this alternative. This shutdown, as frustrating as it is, it might finally force Americans to see the cracks in the system, because if the government can't even keep its doors open without borrowing more money, maybe it's time we face reality. Maybe we should be forced to live within our means, and that's going to cause pain. I understand that. But, you know, both parties talk about a big game when it comes to fiscal responsibility. However, neither of them have the courage to act, and they're terrified of the political backlash. They don't want to touch the debt. They refuse to balance budgets. They refuse to cut spending, so the debt keeps growing. The American people are the ones that keep paying the price. You have Senate Majority Leader John Thune. He put an olive branch to the Democrats. He said he's open to sitting down with any Democrat who's serious about addressing the unsustainability of Obamacare, and he's right. If Obamacare truly worked, we wouldn't need endless subsidies to keep it alive. If it were truly affordable, we wouldn't have rising copays. You wouldn't see skyrocketing deductibles. You wouldn't see less providers. And 16 years ago, you were warned. Critics warned that Obamacare is going to drive premiums up. It's going to crush competition, leave Americans with less choice. They were right. And the COVID subsidies, the only thing they do is delay the reckoning. The reckoning's here. But Democrats want to continue to hold the government hostage in order to hide the damage that they caused. They are the ones responsible for this damage. So either they come to the table, work toward a real solution, or the government stays closed until they do. We'll still have revenue coming in. It's not like when the government shuts down, they stop taking money out of your check or my paycheck. The government's still collecting their taxes. You have the tariffs. The question is, how do we spend it? What programs are essential? Which ones can we no longer afford? And here's my message to every single listener out there. Pick up the phone. Call Democrat members of Congress. Call any of them. Doesn't matter if you live in their district or you don't. You don't have to live in their district. Don't waste time on emails. The emails go nowhere, those generic emails that you send. Call their offices. Tell them that you want them to support a clean, continuing resolution to reopen government. Tell them to stop holding the country hostage to protect a failed law that's hurt millions of Americans. At some point, we have to draw the line. And the path we're on isn't working. Big government has failed time and time again. We see Obamacare collapsing under its own weight. And if Washington won't fix it, the American people have to demand that they do. That's what self-government is all about. Now, I hope you found the content of this episode informative. Please give the P.A.S. report a 5-star rating. Take 30 seconds to write a good review on any podcast platform that allows it, particularly Apple and Spotify, and share this episode with your family and friends. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll be back on Wednesday with another great episode of the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at PAS Report.